welcome to the Master of International Administration webinar. It's with great pleasure that I have an opportunity to introduce the frequent speaker in our classes, former Ambassador Liliana Ayalde, who came to share with us today her views on the leadership in foreign policy. I would also like to acknowledge student organization that helped us in preparation of this event, specifically Interdisciplinary and Professional Graduate Student Organization that does an amazing work for students in different programs, and MAIA International Relations Association. This is an undergraduate association, again, students of which put wonderful events together. So this is a very special event. Because the conversation would be driven predominantly by the questions that have been submitted by the students in Master of International Administration. We will focus on many of them, but as you can imagine, we don't have time for all of them. So if you have something specific that you would like to ask Ambassador Liliana Ayalde, please make sure you post this question in the chat section. And we will leave about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end of our today's event to try to address as many of them as we can possibly have, right? And with great pleasure, again, I have an opportunity to introduce Liliana Ayalde, who is a former US ambassador to Brazil and Paraguay and retired after 38 years of very distinguished career in foreign service. She also served as a civilian deputy to the commander and foreign policy advisor at the United States Southern Command, SOUTHCOM, that we have here in Doral, and as assistant secretary for Central America, Caribbean, and Cuba at the Department of State. She has also served as the deputy assistant administrator for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Ambassador Ayalde earned her Bachelor of Arts from American University and Master of Public Health from Tulane University. She currently serves as a senior advisor to the Americas with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and is a member of several foreign policy and development organizations focusing on matters related to Latin America and the Caribbean. Ambassador Ayalde, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malikova. It's a pleasure to be back. I thank you for your gracious introduction. I also thank all the student organizations that helped pull this together. It really is a pleasure for me to join you today and to be able to share some of my own experience of what has been a wonderful journey for me, an incredible career. And I look forward to sharing some of my personal insights. And I'm hopeful that this will spark some curiosity from some of you of possibly even joining the Foreign Service, or maybe if not the interest, just curiosity about what it is that we do as public servants in development and diplomacy. So. And maybe I should start by going into an initial question that maybe one of you had asked in some of the written questions that I saw was, what got me intrigued about the field of foreign policy, international relations, and how did that get started in my life, and how does that what in my background actually influenced me to choose this career. And I have to say that I look back and I see my father was a Colombian physician, came to the United States to get a master's of public health in Johns Hopkins, and then once he had an MPH, joined the World Health Organization, Pan American Health Organization specifically, and was posted in Suriname. So my first post, in a way, as a child and part of the family was and the experience of living in a foreign country was in Suriname, which we lived there for 5 years, but was with the family. And I think, he was working with the malaria control program at the time, and I used to hear his stories and of how he would travel upriver and did a lot of the community work on the control of communicable diseases. But I have to think that that in a way got me interested, or laid some sort of a platform, a backdrop for me to be interested in this field. Everybody comes at it from different perspectives and for different reasons, but I have to say that that's probably mine. As a family, he was transferred from Suriname. We lived in Peru, we lived in Brazil. So by the time I returned to the United States for high school, I had already lived in all these countries, had been exposed to international development in some way, and to public service. So, from an early age, I became very comfortable with different cultures, living and, trying to value the richness of knowing different countries and their different histories and so forth. And so I think, the skills of adaptability probably was something that I had with me from a very early age. I completed my MPH, my Master's of Public Health, and I also went into public health. So there was something there in Tulane University, and was encouraged by a professor to apply to a position in the United States Agency for International Development. And interestingly enough, I took it on as some, let me try it. And there, 38 years later, here I am. I stayed on with the Foreign Service based on that initial position that I competed, I was selected, and went in through an internship, but it was a 38-year journey that took me through development, diplomacy, even defense, which is quite unique for the Foreign Service. And I feel particularly privileged to have been able to navigate these different realities, and feel very strongly that, that these things together actually is a clear, there's value added in pulling these things together. So that's a little bit about my background. So as I go into some of the questions, we try to lump them together, some of them, so they're not all here probably. And if you might ask, you want to ask them later on. But the first one was, what are some important traits that you would say one needs to have a successful career? And what advice would you wish you had been given when you were just beginning? So I thought about that. Now we can reflect back, and in no particular order. And particularly in the international policy and the national affairs, international development, I thought of some things that would be some traits, skills that would be particularly important to have. One is the passion for the work. I think that it's impossible to be in the Foreign Service, to have a career where you're kind of going from country to country without really liking it and enjoying it. I mean, I met people who were very unhappy and they left. So I think, you need to ask yourself, is this a lifestyle that I enjoy? I was energized by going to different countries, learning about the different cultures and the different reality, the different challenges, and knowing that, well, in the case of USAID, you could be there for 1 year if it's a conflicted zone in a conflicted country, or you could stay for, in the case of myself, in several of my postings, I stayed for 5 years. I stayed 5 years in Bolivia, and 5 years in Guatemala. So I think you have to like what you're doing. You have to be passionate about the field in order to succeed. So, if you don't enjoy it, and if you're negative, it's contagious, and your team will be negative. They won't succeed. You will not be excited about the work. You will not get results in a way that you would want to. It just doesn't work. So it helps when you have passion. You will get noticed, you will get results, and you will lead easier because you will inspire the team. And that's what you want, to motivate the team and to be able to, have fun along the way. And so I think that certainly passion, I call it passion, others may call it differently. You need to like what you're doing. Adaptability, obviously, moving around from country to country is something that is not for everybody. And you need to be prepared to do that. And new bosses all the time, new teams, new counterparts, new realities. Every assignment is different. I often get the question, what did you like best? Was it Paraguay? Was it Bolivia? Was it Guatemala? Was it Nicaragua? Was it what Brazil? What was it? And I have to say that there was something that I loved in every place that I went, whether it was the challenges, the professional challenges, the way we had the partnerships built and had an agenda that we could move forward. It varied. And so I think that, knowing that you have to kind of go with the flow and be adaptable, because these are different circumstances, the hecticness of the work is different, and you need to be prepared to learn new ways. And some people just respond better if there is continuity and if there's predictability. Well, this is not a job for predictability. There are times where, there may be a conflict in the country you're at. And on several occasions in Bolivia, for instance, we were about to be evacuated and we were preparing for evacuations. It didn't happen, but there was enough political turmoil that we, because in any embassy, the number one priority is to take care of the US citizens and of the team that's there, the official team. And so we had to be prepared for every possible thing that could happen. So I think, I would place adaptability right up there as something that's important. The other thing I think is to surround yourself with people who really are good people in what they do, if they're experts. As a leader, and I learned this very quickly, you're not expected to be an expert in everything. And so you surround yourself by the experts that you could rely on for that depth in the discipline, or to have more knowledge, to advise you, to counsel you. Eventually, as a leader, and this is about leadership, you make the decisions. You call the shots, but you want to be as educated as possible in everything, so that that you have in your portfolio or in the kinds of decisions that you make. So you want to surround yourself with people who really know the stuff and are good. So if you have a choice and a way of doing that, recruit people that are motivated in what they're doing, and experts all around that can help you succeed. The other thing I've learned, and it sounds like a simple thing and a sort of an obvious thing, is to care about your people. You have to care about the environment they're working in. Do they work in an environment that is conducive to healthy discussions, where their feedback is appreciated, where they are differing views and points of views and opinions are welcomed as opposed to shut down, where people feel appreciated, that their contributions feel recognized, that they, you give them merit where merit is due, that all the credit is not to the leader. Because at the end of the day, if the team makes up what you do as well. And so it's important to let them shine, to let them, to make sure that they have the space to grow and to dedicate themselves to what they like to do, and recognize their contributions. The next thing I would say is be prepared. I think it's important to walk into anything, and as a diplomat, you never know when you're going to be finding these opportunities to influence policy. So you need to, whether it's a dinner, if you've invited with, people from policymakers or opinion makers or heads of different civil society groups, you can influence that by what you say. And so, but you need to be prepared. You need to do your homework. And so that is very, very true. I learned it in the military. That's what they do all the time. They are prepared, and you need to be prepared. And that's the strength of the military. But it also is diplomats and foreign policy experts. You need to know your issues. You need to use that little time you may have available to influence and be able to articulate it quickly to the spot, what is it that you want to get? If you find yourself sitting next to a minister and you're going, oh, here's my opportunity, that may be your only opportunity. So, make sure you're prepared to get the business done. And the last thing I would say, this is by no means there's many more, but I do want to move on to the other questions, is listening. It's important to listen. I think people forget, it sounds easy, but you have your ideas in your mind and you say, I know what to do. I know what to do. In the Foreign Service, you're moving from country to country. Each country may look similar. Maybe you look at Central America and you say, okay, it's Central America. Each country is very different. You need to take the time to listen, to know the history, to know, what are the issues, what are the challenges, what makes things work. And in the case of the Foreign Service, we walk into an embassy with people who are from that country, who've been there, for many, many years. They can advise you. It's good to walk in not with the preconceived ideas of what would work. That idea may work eventually, but listen, take the time to understand and to really get a good grasp of what you're walking into and say, would this work? Let me bounce off this off, brainstorm, does this work? I did a lot of that with my Foreign Service officers, my locals, and we would pull together a group and say, okay, the economy, it's at the beginning, they said, you want to hear our experience? I said, yes. You are the ones that know your local market. What's happening in the economy? How is that affecting you? And, then you could be much more effective at getting the buy-in and so forth. So anyway, those are some things that I put out there that I think that have helped me, and I wanted to share those with you. The other question I got was, what was your biggest experience or moment that helped you become the best leader that you possibly could be? And what lessons did you learn? As I read this question, I couldn't help but think of a time, and it's really embedded in my mind. It was my second tour in Guatemala, and I had arrived as the health development officer. My responsibility was to oversee the portfolio on health development, immunizations programs, family health care, and that I was very familiar with because I had an academic degree. I had done some field work in it. I had done even some work in my first post in Bangladesh on this. So I feel I could handle it. And yes, I worked on it, it did well. And then the mission director, which was the top boss in the case of USAID, called me into his office and he said, you're doing very well. I'd like to give you the entire education portfolio. And I said, I can't do it. No, I can't do this. I am not an education officer. I don't have the expertise. I don't have the background. Plus it's managing all these people. And he said that on top of that, I want you to be the office director. And I said, what happens to the office director there's now? He's not making, I'm not impressed. I want you to lead. And I said, but he's older. He's more experienced. What am I going to do? He didn't listen to me. This was my boss. And before I knew it, he announced it. I was the new director. So I had to walk into a field I didn't know. I had to manage a situation with a boss that then turned out to be the person that my deputy. And so it was awkward all around. And I had to manage all these people. And so all overnight, and I said, I can't do this. So I guess I learned my next lesson, which is, as a leader, you have to rely on your team. And I realized that I had all this expertise around me, people that were experts on teacher training, curriculum development, bilingual education, because I was in Guatemala and there were 25 different indigenous languages, and we were working with the curriculum and some primary schools that were bilingual, and all foreign to me, but I relied on their expertise. These were really top-notch experts. And then the management came part of it, and I had to learn how to deal with the male, much older boss that then turned out to be, I had to supervise him. And these are just the management challenges that you learn how to do with tact, with discipline, and patience and judgment call, that you kind of work through it. But I guess the other thing that I learned, and the biggest lesson of that, was that sometimes in order to grow professionally, which I did, I think that position took me way off to a different level, is you need to be put outside of your comfort zone. And it's high risk. It's taking risks. So you normally say, no, I'm very comfortable doing health. That's what I like to do. That's what I know how to do. And before I knew it, I was not only doing education, but they gave me everything that related to democracy. I had never worked with the courts. I had never worked with the Congress. I was doing human rights. I was doing working with the electoral tribunal, because we had a lot of money at the time trying to work a lot of these institutions. And, so it was totally unanticipated. I did not plan it. And had not been for that boss who said, this woman can do it, gave me all of this, and I somehow made it work. But I think that the taking risks and putting me out there into this outside of my comfort zone took me in at a senior management level that then opened the doors for me in many other directions. And I've seen that. The same thing happened to me in the case of, when I was invited by SOUTHCOM to go to SOUTHCOM, I said, I'm not in the military. And the commander at the time said, well, I don't need another military advisor. I need you because you know the region, and I am an expert on Latin America, because you know how embassies work. You've been an ambassador, and you know how, who to call when, Washington, you know how Washington works. I said, and I can do that. So, but it was pushing me out in a direction that I'd never been to, and actually I loved it. I loved the experience, and I loved what it brought to me. And what it gave to me. The other question is about gender. Can you please share the challenges you've experienced in your career as a woman in leadership positions? What was the most challenging point of your career, whether in terms of decision-making, communication, earning recognition, respect, setting expectations, and how did you overcome those? So, I thought about this question, and I have to say that in my particular case, I focused very much on getting the job done. I didn't let the fact that I was a woman distract from what I was trying to do, which was take care of my team and get results. And I figured that by my achievements, I would get recognized. And this, in fact, allowed me to succeed. And so for me, it was important to know who I was working for, who was going to be my boss before I accepted an assignment. Because even though the assignment may have been very nice, but if the boss was someone that didn't give you the space to succeed because you were a woman, or didn't delegate, or was unsure, and that would have been tough and difficult. So, and a lot of cases, but at least in the Foreign Service, you sort of have some flexibility in knowing where you're going to go. Sometimes you get designated to a country, but if you have the power to choose, make sure you know who you're going to work for, to ensure that that person is a team player, allows you to grow, to succeed. And I had wonderful bosses and men who turned out to be mentors, who empowered me, who gave me the space to grow. And I feel that, but at the bottom of it was really the hard work, the dedication, and the passion for the work I was doing. And that's what happened when I was designated as ambassador. I had no intention of being an ambassador. I was working in Colombia. I was effective at what I was doing. I had an incredible team. I was being successful. And I got tapped on the shoulder by the State Department and said, we'd like you to be an ambassador. How could you say no to that? And I think it had to do with the fact that I was shining in what I was doing. I could have stayed in Colombia because there was so much work to do and it was such a strong partnership, but that was a wonderful opportunity. You know, even though I've worked most of my career in the Western Hemisphere, and the Western Hemisphere is known for being kind of macho oriented, a male oriented society or dominated. I think that what I relied on was the fact that as US government representative, I had a brand, you know, in a way I was US government. So I had a seat in the table and I didn't let that down, meaning I was going to do my best. I was going to walk in there prepared. I knew what I wanted to accomplish. And so whether it was as USAID mission director or certainly as US ambassador, that was a heavy brand that really gave me a seat at the table. I had awkward moments, you know, and probably one of the ones that was bad. It related to a boss who was a deputy chief of mission, which is the number 2 in an embassy. That was a male and arrived to supervise the mission with very little experience in the region. I had a lot of experience. The counterparts would gravitate to me, and so he felt very uneasy, and eventually it became a big issue. But at the end of the day, it wasn't only me. There were other individuals that were impacted by this, and actually there was an investigation, and he was pulled out. But I learned from it. I learned from that experience, and I think we learned from both bad and from good. And it gave me credibility in the system that there are tools that you can call on when things don't work out. I didn't call them, but others did. And at the end of the day, the institution took care of this. A related question is on diversity, and what I understand is what is diversity? I have a very broad definition of diversity. I have my definition is very broad because the challenges and the global threats of today are growing, becoming more and more complex and tremendously. They don't have boundaries. They're, you know, look at anything like cybersecurity. You know, they're tremendously difficult, and they don't have a simple solution. And I believe that in order to effectively address them, it's key to have a diverse look at them from all perspectives. I mean, we saw it through the pandemic. You know, you had to look at it through the economic perspective, through the public health perspective, for the political it is really all encompassing. And I think that as a female, I bring different skills and different insights to the table. I just see things differently. And as a Hispanic, I do as well. So I feel that it provides me with some additional tools maybe that some others don't. And so it's a value added for a team to have me on their team, because I bring this additional insight into perspectives, into searching for that solution or responding to whatever challenges. It's a richness of views, and I've seen this work. That's why I'm a strong proponent of the interagency and what this means in the public sector, and certainly in the foreign policy perspective. The interagency is, you know, you take an issue, let's say migration, and which is a very hot topic now in Central America. You know, you can't look at it just from one perspective. It's very all-encompassing. And you need to bring all the agencies together in the table to be able to try to be responsive to this. It's a really tough issue. But I worked in the interagency, was a very strong proponent of it in Colombia when we were dealing with how to address the issues of the FARC and the counter narcotics and the ungoverned spaces, and it had to do with security, but it also had to do with development. So you had to work with the government and the different ministries, with the private sector, with civil society. And so it's that interchange of diverse views and diverse skills that you bring together that allow you to see things in a much more effective way, and be certainly much more effective in finding solutions for that. So I think that that's why I am a strong, my definition of diversity, it comes from that perspective that, it really is important to bring all the tools, all the skills to the table, because our issues are too complex to look at them from just one perspective. And so as females, we bring that different gender view to it. And I consider that myself as Hispanic, being bilingual and bicultural, I also bring a different set of skills to the table. The issues are so complex that you need that kind of thinking to be able to succeed. I think, let's see, the last question before we open it up to all of you is, what are some of the differences when it comes to leadership in different countries that you have had the opportunity to serve? So I think it goes back to the first one of the skills that I mentioned on listening. And it's so important to walk into a country and really learn, what is it that, how is it that you approach things? I'll never forget one of the first events I walked into in Guatemala, and I had to hand out diplomas for a municipal development program. And there were indigenous women and indigenous males that were coming and receiving this diploma. And I realized that no one had taught me that there's a special way you actually greet the males and you greet the females, and the indigenous would kind of pat on the back. And I was totally confused. I realized, oh my God, why didn't anybody tell me about these things? And I think more important in, certainly in foreign policy, when it gets to be these very sensitive, delicate issues, where you're trying to carry our national interests forward, you sometimes have to find this space where you've generated the trust in order to talk frankly about some of these issues that you wouldn't do it in public. But you have to have the trust of who you're talking with. And, there's, like, I remember in Brazil, you never walked into a meeting without chit-chatting for a little while over a cup of coffee. And I would take some of the junior officers along with me, because they'd say, oh, we need to get this, these are talking points. And I think they were a little bit thrown off at times, because, when are we getting to the points, But I found that it was important to and every country's different. It may be, having that tea time to generate that trust. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to have those frank discussions. Our agendas, our bilateral agendas as an ambassador, I've dealt with complex issues and fun issues. It's great to be handing out scholarships or, be part of the Fulbright Commission and, do incredible research, and it's all positive news. But sometimes, we may not see eye to eye, and Washington may want certain issues flagged, or we may want the specific country to join us in a UN decision or an OAS resolution. And they're delicate discussions, and so you need to have the trust of who you're talking to be able to sit down and have these conversations in an open fashion. You may not disagree, but that's the point, is that have the conversation. Having the conversation is important, and having the conversation in a way that you could have it openly without having to, without any reservations. So you can find a way to negotiate and to communicate and to get to what you're trying to achieve. So, and every country is very different. And you have to figure out what resonates, what is acceptable, what are the protocols, and it takes a little time, a little homework up front to be able to know what that is. There may not be anything, but if there are, you certainly would make a big mistake by walking into unprepared and losing the opportunity, or even making a big mistake that could turn into a policy issue that elevates to a level that you wouldn't want it to. So I think that would be the answer to that last question. And with that, I think I've gone a little quickly over some of the responses, but we can always go back, and I'll just leave it at that and let maybe open it up for a couple of questions, right, Professor? What do you think?
Thank you so much, Ambassador. That was very interesting, definitely very content rich, a lot for us to reflect upon, and very good on time, I have to be honest with you. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, and if you don't mind, I will read it out for you. So the first one is actually regarding the geopolitical competition in Latin America. Over the years, China has become a top trading partner for Latin American countries, and its influence has grown in the region. In your view, from a US leadership perspective, what should the US do to effectively counter China's inroads in Latin America, to effectively balance China's influence in the region?
So true. As someone who's worked in the region since I served in Guatemala, before that I was in Asia, but served first in Guatemala, then in Nicaragua, then in Bolivia, Colombia, Paraguay, and Brazil. Yes, the influence of China has grown exponentially. And not only as a trading partner, but involved in many other areas. And I think, it's kind of an uneven playing field, because they can tell their private sector, to do this, to do that. Here, we can't push the private sector to invest, but I think it's important. We need to compete with China and be the partner of choice. And so we need to have a seat in the table. We need to be present. We need to be seen. And it's having, particularly, I'm very concerned that, we don't have ambassadors in a number of the countries, because it's so important to have an ambassador. Yes, the charge d'affaires can do very much, but there's nothing like the weight of an ambassador to be visible, to have a voice. And if you don't, you leave it vacant, then China or others can come in and take up that space. And so we need to be able to compete and have a seat in the table as much as possible. And I saw this, if we look at the military, and certainly the work with SOUTHCOM was creating the best partnerships we could in the region, so that they would select us as their preferred partner. When we talk about, the best training, or the best, if they're buying some sort of equipment, a vehicle, whatever, it comes with the maintenance, it comes with the replacements, and Chinese don't do that. Now, the Chinese have learned over the years in the way they operate and the way they do business. It used to be that they would bring their workers, and Latin America right now and the Caribbean, and there may be some that still accept it, but that they have their own workers, right? They don't want the Chinese coming in. So I think they're learning as well as and how to best approach. I mean, they've got amazing fluent Spanish speakers, that they didn't before. And so they are more and more visible. And so I think it's important for the United States to be present, to be active and in Latin America. And just because we're so close and easy to get to, we can't lose sight of our neighbors. And so as much as we could do to be there, to be able to compete and win favorably, that's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador. Definitely not not an easy situation, right? So to speak, China has been very proactive, especially considering some of the vacuum that has been left in Latin America by the previous administration. Both China and Russia very eagerly tried to fill it in, but even though China has been active in the region way before then. There is a question on your advice in approaching foreign service officer test, if you have any, and maybe the selection process. I don't know if you have any insights to share with the students on that.
I don't have any specific, I joined the Foreign Service through a different route, which was I came in through USAID, which is the Foreign Service. You're a diplomat equally so, but I had panels, I had tests that dealt more with my professional background at the time, which was health. And so I came in through that route. It was very competitive. And I understand that, a lot of my friends, of course, and colleagues in State Department, because then I went into the state, and then the last 10 years of my career were basically in the State Department. There are individuals that are in the different universities that could help you with that. Those are the diplomats in residence. Maybe I can get you some of their names that can give you the specifics of when to take the Foreign Service test and how could you best prepare for it, and a little bit more about the recruitment and selection process. I know there are various ways now that you can go in. I was at a part of a selection panel for some of the scholarships through the Payne scholarships, but there are a variety of different ways. But the traditional Foreign Service test is not something I took, but I can get you the information and I'll pass that on.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. That's very kind of you. There is another question. Is there an area you didn't quite tap into over the course of your career that you wish you would have pursued or had the opportunity to dedicate more time to?
Oh, wow. I think, as in the leadership positions I was in, particularly as ambassador, I had the opportunity to get involved in so many things because you have to oversee everything. And a place like Brazil, for instance, which is huge. And so you've got commercial interests, you've got energy, you've got agriculture, you've got trade and trade facilitation, you've got education, you've got culture, you've got defense issues, you've got, it's space, cyber, counter narcotics, you've got border issues, you've got, my gosh, the agenda was huge. And I actually wanted to get more seasoned in one thing or another, but I didn't have the time because so it was more about being superficial in so many things. I was so intrigued with, for instance, the field of agriculture, because Brazil and the United States are two countries that are the biggest producers in the world of food. And we would bring farmers to Brazil and they go, oh my God, that's how they do it here? Oh, let's take some of that know-how back there. And let me teach you how we do it. There's so much that can be done. Of course, there are issues too, but areas that are protected and so forth, but there's so much, and I wish I could have dug into it more. And it's as your own interest, it's endless. It's, whether you're talking sports. So it was more that I tapped into so many areas, but not deep enough, that I wish I could have had the time to do it deeper. Because I had to represent everybody. And so whether it was, you know, the astronaut came into town, so I had to learn about, you know, what were our engagements on space engagements and what were the issues. And it was everything and a little bit of everything. And of course, I carried my experts with me, but it got me excited about the different fields. And so it's kind of a different side of your question, Sandra, but that's how I would answer that.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. The other question is on the decision that you probably have taken, but then regretted in your line of work. Is there anything that you can maybe share with us, something that you could recall?
Yes. So what we do in the Foreign Service is we bid on positions, right? You know, you bid on positions 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and you have to put positions in different regions and put some that are in conflictive areas, that kind of thing. And so at one point in my career, I had bid on several positions, one of which was Director of Central American Affairs, and I had been in Nicaragua. And another one was something called a different position, which was more global. And I got advised by friends that, you know, oh, this is the politically correct thing to do because it's led by a political appointee, you'll get exposure. And, you know, everyone kind of talked into my ears. And I took the position, but it wasn't what I liked to do. And I felt horrible about it. And it was keeping me up at night. And you know, and I said, I can't do this. I can't do this to my boss. I can't do this to myself. And so I went and talked to the person in charge. And I said, look, I don't normally do this. This is the first time and the last time I'll ever do this. I made the decision and I regret having made it, but I want to go back to the area that I love and I care about, and I have to take my nomination back. And disappointed, but the person understood, and I do not regret having been true to myself. I guess that's what it is.
That's very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing. Another question actually is on Latin America as well. Do you think that Colombia would have been engulfed as a full-fledged narco state without the work of Plan Colombia? Would you consider the initiative a relative success? And where do you feel the improvements have been made, could have been made?
Wow, this is a good question. There's plenty of research. In fact, I'm on a panel for a book that's going to be published soon on the experience of Plan Colombia. I was engaged in the early part of Plan Colombia. I served in Colombia in 2005, 2008. I do believe that had we not joined and partnered with Colombia during that time, Colombia would be a very different place. I saw it change during my time there in terms of security. I saw regions of the country recuperated, and we can talk about today, which is, but recuperated from the perspective of security, and people given more opportunities, more presence of the state. And so I think that there were definitely improvements. And certainly if you look at a number of the indicators, whether it was kidnappings and certain other violence, examples of violence, there were successes. However, you know, nothing is a straight line. And I think that things change. There are decisions that are made, you know, people change. And I think as the FARC started demobilizing, other groups sprung up, and they were less identifiable, harder to, it wasn't like one leadership, but, the Bacrim or, the Clan del Golfo, just so many different groups. I think there was slowness on behalf of the governments, the state, to actually establish the presence of the state in areas of the country that had no presence of the state. And it was very difficult. It goes back to that issue that I talked about, which was interagency coordination. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to talk about coordination. It's another thing to do it. I saw during my time a genuine effort in trying to make that coordination work between the military and the civilian entities, but there was no budget by the civilian institutions to actually deploy the health or the justice entities and the prosecution and the police presence, community policing out there. And there were abuses, and so that made everything complicated. We have had Colombia's issue with Venezuela, and that has complicated any success. It would have been impacted not only by the flow of, millions of Venezuelans that have moved into Colombia, but because a number of the illegal activity was, whether it was the former FARC who was in narco trafficking and would move into Venezuela and be protected and then move back and do their dirty business. There's now other kinds of illegal business, not only drugs, certainly the gold, and it's just gotten tremendously complex. And the security has become an issue. The pandemic hasn't helped. The economy has gotten more complicated. So we do. So the second part of the question is, would you have consider the initiative a relative success? Where do you feel so yes, it was a success then, but you need continuity. And Plan Colombia was a lot of money. You don't have that forever. And so it takes a lot of creativity and a lot of engagement. I think when you compare, for instance, what happened in Mexico, the private sector was much more engaged in the case of Colombia because it affected a lot of their interests. I think that needs to continue and be much more active in order to have sustainable success. And it's never going to be perfect, but I think you build on it. And certainly if we look back and you hadn't had that Plan Colombia, I think the situation today would be much worse.
Okay, thank you so much for this very extended and insightful comment. Another question, quite lighthearted, right? Retirement seems to be the next chapter for you, since you retired recently from a very long career in the foreign service. You seem to be very busy. How do you see fulfilling what you otherwise have been a condensed and full-time agenda?
So I've enjoyed, so I had a very intense agenda, a lot of travel, particularly in my last assignment with Southern Command. And I hadn't mentioned that, but it was the role of the civilian deputy commander, which was basically to accompany the commander to all he did travel, he had his own plane, which meant, we could hit 3 countries in 3 days or 4 countries in 3 days. And so we were on the road a lot. And of course, there were various issues that kept us up at night in the region, not only natural disasters, which could have been, the hurricanes that hit or the volcanoes and countries helping for for immediate response and assistance through USAID and others, and going to Washington and dealing with coordination, and it was very intense. And so I really welcomed the opportunity to have my own time. and to have that flexibility. But I also feel that I am privileged to have had the kind of career that I had. And so one of the things that I've enjoyed doing is being able to give back in a way, events like this, and talking to students and being able to answer their questions, get them excited about maybe some kind of work in the foreign arena, because there are many, not only in the public service, and to be able to, I feel like I have a unique perspective because I've been able to see development. So a lot of the diplomats have just been in the Foreign Service, State Department, right? I was in it and through development, which is a much longer, there are differences, but development is longer term. You know, if you're in an embassy, the minister calls you and says, you know, I want this visa resolved because, you know, we need to get such and such a minister in tomorrow to talk to so-and-so and climate change or whatever. And it's a very kind of immediate thing. And so the mix of two, which is long-term for short-term, is really the reality. You can't say, oh no, this is much more important. The political agenda is much more important than the long. It's both. And so I feel I have that. And then I also have the security angle, which I think today it's critical. I mean, if you look at the issues of the region, you know, people care about being secure to go to work. And, you know, security is, it can be as simple as just everyday crime, or it can be cybersecurity, or misinformation and disinformation and things that we can't. So I feel like I have, you know, had been exposed to having this kind of triangular perspective. And so I've been looking to do things that I can contribute in, you know, and whether it's in certain consultancies that are very short term. And I've been invited to go back to government, but I have chosen that I really want to take a little break and do something different.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We have the last question, but we're also running out of time. So I'm not quite sure if you would feel comfortable answering the last question on Nicaragua.
Sure, let's see what is it.
Yeah, was it difficult to work in a country such as Nicaragua, given the political situation? Do you think Nicaragua has a chance to turn around, given the current political climate?
So I worked in Nicaragua at a totally different mindset. I was there with Doña Violeta. It was all about hope. It was all about, it's a tremendous difference in, you know, it was the Sandinistas had been left behind. There was a surprise election and a democratically elected government came in. I went in as one of their first team members to actually open up. It was fascinating. You know, the country was still, I mean, I remember people walking around in fatigues because for 12 years we had been absent. The first official American to walk into the Ministry of Health, got a lot of looks. But, you know, we were able to build up a number of programs, and it was just fascinating. So I have a special place for Nicaragua in my heart. I follow it closely. I went back again. My husband was working in Nicaragua at the time. He was not Nicaraguan, but had an assignment there. So we went back again under a different leadership. But what's been happening is just deplorable. And I am glad that the world, you know, with the exception of maybe 3 countries, have called this sham election. What happened this last Sunday. And I have to think that this has to turn around. It can't continue the way it is. I read some of the sanctions that have been issued not only by the United States, but by the European Union and Canada and the UK. I'm hopeful that that will they will feel the pain and let go of some of these political opposition members that don't deserve to be, they didn't deserve to be imprisoned one day. And it's just the voices have been shut out. I have many Nicaraguan friends. I want to continue to be hopeful that I don't know what can be there. It's not an easy solution to turn it around. But I know that the various international entities are sending strong messages. The Ortega couple is probably not going to listen to them, but they can't come to Miami anymore. They can't use their, property, send their kids. And, there are, that list is quite apparent that they're going for the jugular and trying to restrict them, not the Nicaraguan people, but those that have abused power, those that are corrupt. And so I'd like to think that there are better times for Nicaragua ahead.
Again, thank you so much, Ambassador, for this exciting conversation. We have a lot of questions that are still left, but we're really looking forward to seeing you with us in the future. Enjoy your free time or more free time rather than, right? Because you still dedicate a lot of time to the conversations like we're having, and we're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much again, and we're looking to see you back hopefully very soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all. Bye-bye.